Today on our 2008 Honda Civic, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the CURT Class 1 Custom Fit Trailer Hitch Receiver, part number C11391. So here's what our hitch is going to look like. It is going to sit just right below the bumper, and that cross tube is going to be visible. But mainly what we're going to see is that receiver tube sticking out, which is going to be pretty close to flush with our back bumper, so we're not going to have to worry about bumping our knee or our shin when we're walking by. Now it is a Class 1 hitch, which means it's going to give us that 1¼ by 1¼ receiver tube opening. And as you can see, it's got that nice reinforced collar, not only giving it the added strength, but also it's just going to give it an overall clean, finished look to it. Now the way we're going to attach any of our accessories is going to be right here to the hitch pin hole here. And it's going to accept a standard 1/2" pin and clip, which are included, which is always a nice added bonus. Now as far as the safety chain connection points go, it's going to be a plate style welded to the bottom. And we're going to have plenty of room to get most size hooks on or off. And the slight offset from the hitch pin hole, it's going to be nice because we're not going to have to worry about any kind of interference if we're using a locking device. Now as far as the weight capacity goes, our hitch is going to feature a 200-pound tongue weight, which is going to be the maximum force that is going to be pushing down. It's also going to have a 2,000-pound gross trailer weight rating, which is going to be the maximum amount that it can pull. Now with all that in mind, I do want to mention you always want to double check your vehicle's owner's manual to make sure that you're not going to exceed the manufacturer's weight rating. One thing I do want to mention is that CURT does recommend that you use a stabilization strap anytime that you're towing anything, any non-trailer loads or anything that doesn't have any tires on it, such as a cargo carrier or a bike rack. I'd like to give you a few measurements that's going to help you when deciding for accessories for your new hitch, such as a bike rack or even a cargo carrier. From the center of the hitch pin hole to the outermost edge of the bumper, it's going to be right about 2½ inches. From the ground to the inside top edge of the receiver tube opening, it's going to be right about 11¼ inches. Now that we've seen what our hitch looks like, going over some of the features, let's show you how to get it installed. To begin our installation, we're going to come to the bottom of our car, and over here on the passenger side, we're going to have the muffler. And if we look up just right behind the bumper, we're going to have the rubber isolator that's on the hanger. Now we're going to lower the exhaust down. So I'm going to take a little bit of spray lubricant. I'm going to spray the hanger down, making it a little bit easier to slide that off. You just grab a pry bar or whatever you have available, and the end result is you're just going to want to slide that rubber off of the hanger. Normally I suggest using a strap anytime you lower the exhaust, but the control arm here on the back is going to prevent the muffler from going down any farther, and there's nowhere else that we can put a strap to support it, so we're not going to have to worry about any damage. Now if we move to the center section underneath our vehicle, we're going to have this big plastic appearance panel. Now at the very back, we're going to have 2 bolts, and then if we go to the driver's side, we're going to have another bolt holding it on the side. We're going to be using a 10mm socket to remove those. Now the only thing holding our plastic panel in place is going to be these plastic push pin fasteners. We're going to have 1 towards the very back on the driver's side, and then 2 at the very, very back of the panel right at the bumper. You're going to want to take a flathead screwdriver, and if you look closely at these push pins, there's going to be a center section and a little notch. We're going to try to pop out that center section first. And that's going to take the tension off of the clip. And once we have that center section pried out or popped out, we can go and remove the outer section. And we'll repeat that for the other remaining clips. Now we're going to set this aside because we are going to be reinstalling this panel. So the panel we took out, over on the driver's side where we have that real slight flange where it mounts to the frame, this section I marked out, that's going to need to be trimmed just to make just enough room so the hitch can come in and cut over. Now you may not have to cut this out if you can finesse it into place, but the instructions do show a different panel and they show a little bit different trimming. But over here on the driver's side, we're just going to make 2 vertical cuts, and then we're going to cut straight across. It's not even that big of a section, maybe 1/4 of an inch from the very edge going down the panel. Like I said, just enough to clear that hitch. I'm using a pair of tin snips, and it's just plastic, so whatever you have available. You just want just enough room right here so that hitch can slide into place, and you can have your 2 mounting holes have room for the hitch to get in there. With the panel trimmed, we can go ahead and put our fasteners back in place and put the panel back up. Now over on the passenger side, right above our muffler, we're going to remove our heat shield, and we're going to have 3 bolts, 1 towards the very back, and then 2 along the passenger side frame rail. I'm going to be using a 10mm socket to remove those bolts. Now underneath our panel, we are going to have 1 more bolt holding it in place right by the center section on our vehicle. Now our heat shield we are going to have to trim. I went ahead and trimmed out the section we're going to need to, but the side that has the 2 mounting holes on the flatter section, you're going to be trimming out this rectangular piece. So you're going to want to come up just to about maybe a little bit past where that bend is, where it dips down, and then you're going to want to come just straight back towards the edge. There's going to be a slight notch at the end of the heat shield, and about that area, if you just cut straight up and make that intersection right here, that's what's going to need to be trimmed. Now that you have it trimmed out, we're going to go ahead and reinstall this and put it back on the car. Just want to keep in mind you are losing one of those mounting locations on your heat shield, so we're only going to be putting 3 bolts back in place. We can start getting our hardware in place, and if we come to the center, we're going to have our tow hook. So we're going to grab our 3/8 U-bolt, and we're just going to drop it down so it's going on either side of our tow hook. Now here over on the passenger side, we're going to see that we have several holes in the frame. Now if we come to the rearmost hole, that's going to be where we're going to be putting our hardware in. We're going to grab our fish wire, and I'm going to put a slight bend in it, going down. And we're going to feed our fish wire in through that hole, and we're going to want it to come out that rather large hole right here. Now you may need to kind of reach in and grab it. Now once you have it coming out coiled end, you're going to want to grab a spacer block. It's going to have a square hole in it. We're going to feed that over the coiled end, and then you're going to want to grab one of your carriage bolts. It's going to have a round head with a square block underneath. We're going to thread that onto the coiled end of our wire. Now 1 piece at a time, we're going to feed our spacer block up into the frame, and we're going to follow that by our carriage bolt. Now we're going to pull that pull wire until all of our hardware can come back to that original hole, and we're going to drop it down through. Now we're going to do this on both sides. For the hole just forward of that hole we put the bolt through, we're going to take our handle nut, and you may need to bend it however to get it to sit flat, but we're going to go in that access hole, and we're going to go towards the back of our frame, towards the back of the vehicle. And our end goal is to have that handle nut nice and flat against the frame in this hole right here. In the instructions, it does mention that this hole may need to be drilled out just slightly so that you can get the hardware in place. So we can go ahead and grab our bolts along with the conical tooth washer, and you want to make sure that the teeth are facing away from the head of the bolt or towards the hitch. And we can go ahead and line up our handle nut, and we can see that it does go into place, and it does go through the hole, and we can thread it into place. So now that we have this side done and we know that our hardware will go through, we can go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. So you're going to make sure you take your pull wires, and our pull wire is going to go towards the very back hole on the side. And now here on the passenger side, you also want to make sure that that bar is underneath the muffler hanger. And you're going to want to lift the hitch and the hanger at the same time, kind of pushing up on that muffler so that you can get it into place. Now we're going to take either the bolt and washer or a flange nut, whichever is easier to get into place. And we're going to remove the pull wire. And we're going to take that flange nut and secure it to that carriage bolt. Now you're going to want to make sure that you get one bolt on each side to support the hitch. We don't have to worry about it falling down. Once the hitch is loosely supported, we're still going to be able to move it side to side because those holes are slotted. So you're going to want to get it centered and make sure that that U-bolt is coming down through the two holes in our hitch here. And once it's all nice and centered and they are coming down, we're going to grab the smaller flange nuts and we can secure them to that U-bolt. You may need to lift up slightly on the hitch to get them started. Typically it is easier to get those flange nuts started to support the hitch so it won't fall, because it's probably going to be necessary to use two hands to hold the handle nut and then come back with that bolt and conical tooth washer and get everything started. And once the bolt's started, you're not going to have to hold on to that handle nut anymore, but it probably is going to take a little bit to get everything lined up, and hold it with one hand and thread the bolt in with the other hand. And once you have that bolt in, go ahead and get the other one in on the other side. Now for our flange bolts that are in the side of our frame, I'm going to come back with an 11/16 socket and snug both of them up. For our 1/2 inch bolts here, I'm going to come back with a 3/4 inch socket and snug them up. Now fortunately, we can just kind of push the exhaust to the side and we can get it an extension and we can barely get our socket in there. And we'll tighten up the other one as well. For our 3/8 U-bolts and the nuts here, I'm going to be using a 9/16 socket to snug those up. Now you're going to want to go back and forth alternating so it doesn't get in a bind. Now with the same 9/16 socket, I'm going to come back and I'm going to torque my hardware to the specified amount in the instructions. Now it's going to be very important you pay attention to the torque specs, because our 11/16 bolt or our 7/16 hardware is going to have a different spec than our 1/2 inch hardware is. And we'll repeat that for all of our remaining hardware. To make it a little bit easier to get our exhaust in place, I am going to spray down that rubber hanger again with some spray lubricant. That's just going to make it a little bit easier to slide over those metal posts. Now it may be a little bit of a tight fit, but you're going to want to push that rubber isolator to the back side of the vehicle. You're going to lift up on the muffler, then you can push it back on to those posts. And just double check that it's in position, and then it went over that flange on the post. That'll finish up your look at the CURT Class 1 Custom Fit Trailer Hitch Receiver, part number C11391 on our 2008 Honda Civic.
Thanks for watching. Click the link in our description below to shop, learn more, or visit us at etrailer.com. And leave us a comment if you have any questions.